Landmines? Oh, she's so cute! Squiggly wiggly!
Hello and welcome to WedSNESday and Zelda Month. I did pretty good at timing these two coming out at the same time, right? Anyway, these console Zelda games that I know the least amount about is Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past. But see how it says Zelda right there? That means that we've got great music, fun items, and intriguing dungeons to just jump into and delve. So let's do that. Let's jump in as quickly as possible.
So I wake up in the middle of the night to see my uncle. He grabs the family sword and tells me not to follow him. Is this kind of like Far Cry 4? Can I actually wait for him to come back?
Come on, let's go.
Nah, this is a 1991 game. I don't think that they have clever Easter eggs like that yet. So I defiantly go out, find the castle, and I uproot this plant that I actually had a pretty hard time finding when I made the WedSNESday opening. At the bottom of the hole, I find my uncle who's been mortally wounded. So I take the sword and I head out to save Zelda, for she is my...
Perhaps he was dictating. Oh, shut up.
You know, even after beating the game, I still don't know what she is to me.
So I take the Zelda and I wait, I take the Zelda? I wrote I took the Zelda! So I take the sword and I samfish my way past some guards until I find the boomerang. But when I got to this room, I could not resist but knocking some of the foes to their dooms. It reminds me of one of my favorite play of the games that I got in Overwatch. Oh, I'm so disrespectful. Bye-bye! So I get to Zelda and really quickly she asks me to escort her to a sanctuary. But she also tells me that those men that I killed were actually the castle soldiers being controlled by the sorcerer. No! I killed innocent men. I mean, at worst they were being mind controlled, but at the best they were just being coerced into compliance. And I murdered them. Oh, okay, for royal soldiers for the rest of the game, I'm not gonna kill them. I'm gonna use my boomerang to stun them and just walk past. No, wait, come back on! I killed another one! So eventually we make it to the throne room and push aside the emblem to open the path to the underground sewer. We make our way down and I use the lantern to save Zelda from the nasty rats. But eventually we make it through and we get to the sanctuary. From here, I leave Zelda with the priest dude and they tell me to go meet Shamamalama. I make my way to Shamamalama and he tells me that in order to reverse the great evil, I'm going to need the Master Sword. But I probably won't be able to pull it as is. I mean, the sword will not budge for someone who doesn't have at least 3 fly necklaces. Besides, the forest is really nasty for someone with only 3 hearts and 30 minutes of gameplay experience. So I head into the first dungeon, which is pretty easy, but the boss was less so. It was a tough boss fight, especially for a new player. I mean, I did beat it, but it lured me to 1 hit from death, and its frantic attack pattern on the last guy had me just sweating bullets. No, slash! Oh, I got him! Okay. Oh. After I finished up the temple, Shamamalama gave me the Pegasus shoes. And so for the remainder of the game, if I needed to walk in a straight line for more than 4 spaces, I was Pegasusing. I was using the Pegasus shoes. Next, Shamamalama sent me to the desert temple, but before I went there, I headed into the town and met all sorts of interesting people. First, I met this dude who offered to sell me a bottle. Hold it above your head, it's good for business. But this scallywag doesn't get any more bottles for the rest of the game, so I don't see why he's so keen on using me as his billboard. I went to this lady, who immediately called the local soldiers to kill me. You ratted me out! And this kid who told me how to meet Shamamalama, but he doesn't tell bad people. I'm guessing he got different information than the rat lady over there. So I make it to the next temple, but it's blocked by some cryptic language. I make my way to the desert hermit, who tells me that I'll need a book to decipher the glyphs. And that reminds me that I went to the library, but I saw the book, but I couldn't quite reach it. I tried to use my boomerang to reach up and get it, but I couldn't get it. But wait, what if I use my new favorite item? The shoes! Yeah, I got the book! So I take the book to the rock and then I read it and it says it'll let anybody in if they truly wish for it.
I wish with all my heart
For the door to open! Once I was inside, the dungeon was quick, even faster than the first one was, but the consequence of this was a stupid, cheap boss. So there's like these snake worm things, they pop up and they fly around the room, and when they pop up they can like shoot out rocks that hurt you, and they usually fly away from you, making it so you can't even land a sword strike when they're up, and it makes it pretty hard to hurt them, but easy to take damage, and this is a bit of a theme throughout the whole game. The easier the dungeon, the harder the boss is, and on the other side of the spectrum, if the dungeon is exhausting, you usually have a chump waiting for you in the enemy chamber. But I did eventually get a technique that worked, and I minced those suckers to score myself the second necklace. And with that, I need to head to the top of Zelda staple, Death Mountain. On the way up, I meet Old Coot, who I lead to his secret cave, and then he gives me a mirror and full heals. He's cool, I like him, because the falling rocks are painful, but they are not enough to stop me. I get to the top of the mountain and I see this blue square. Once I step on it, whoa, wacky fun times, I'm in another world!
And I'm a bunny.
And I kinda got stuck here for a while in rabbit form. Eventually I looked up what I was supposed to do, and it was take 2 steps to the left, transfer back to the light world, grab the heart piece, and then head on into the Tower of Hera. And it was fairly easy. Harder than the last dungeon, but easier than the first one. And the boss matches in difficulty. You see, this dungeon had a lot to do with knockback and falling down, and this boss is a total pushover, as in he pushes you over the cliff and you need to scamper back up the stairs, and then hit him in the tail until you gain victory. With 3 necklaces in hand, 4 extra hearts, and a couple hours of game experience, I am ready to enter the forest and search for the sword. Once I get in there, I beat back monsters and I find a fake sword. But eventually I find a clearing and I Pegasus run towards it. Alright, here we go. Master Sword time! The blade of evil's bane is mine to wield! And through telepathy, Zelda tells me that she's in trouble, so I use the Pegasus shoes to sprint back to the sanctuary. But I was too late. Zelda's guardian tells us that they failed, and then dies with a heart full of regret. So I head to the castle with the Master Sword in my hand. Unfortunately, because of the strength of the Master Sword, whenever I'm sprinting, I now murder the green guys instantly. But hey, if you're that weak, I guess Hyrule didn't need you.
Those were murders. I need to find a way to justify it.
I make it to the castle and I slice away the electricity and step inside. Chet, I have been waiting for you. I was hoping that I could make Zelda vanish in front of your eyes. Behold, the last moment of Princess Zelda!
Well, if you think I'm just gonna sit still while you commit this atrocity, then, Link, do something! Shoot an arrow! Throw a bomb! Even the boomerang! Don't just stand there! 12 seconds. Link just stood there for 12 seconds. Whatever.
And now I need to fight Anagram, and it's a pretty cool fight because, you know, he shoots spells at me, and I baseball him back at him. My one complaint is that there aren't really enough animations. Okay, so to hit the attacks back at him, you need to stand still. But he has a chance of shooting 3 different spells, the third one being this giant lightning bolt. But when he's charging up all 3 of them, they look the same, so you might just be standing there.
He winds up ready for the pitch and strike!
Get it? Because sometimes a lightning bolt is called a lightning strike, and I'm doing like a baseball analogy. Back to the video.
So I hit him with enough of his spells that he just decides to warp me away to the Dark World, where his evil is law. But when I was in the Tower of Hera, I got myself this pearl that allows me to not be a bunny in the Dark World. Now my goal is to head to the 7 dungeons and to save all of the maidens that Amazon banished to the Dark World. And to start this, I head over to the dark version of where Shamama Llama was. I hire a monkey who opens up the first dungeon for me and I head on inside. And this first dungeon was fantastic. Great game design here. Challenge was nicely tuned, and I got the hammer. I thought about the layout of the dungeon, the mechanics, and I just had a great time. And then the Helversar King. PBG put the Helversar King in his top 10 bosses, and I would have to disagree. This guy was stupid. Screw that scorpion tail attack. It is not well telegraphed, and the damage is unreal. I beat him eventually, and I saved maiden number 1. And then I kind of got lost for over an hour in this game, and I checked the walkthrough. What I needed to do next was get myself a pair of the Zora flippers. So I went, I bought them, and I headed into the next dungeon, which was the best dungeon. Not because of its level design, but to its credit, it was a water dungeon that did not make me want to perform seppuku. No, the reason that this dungeon was tops was the dungeon item. Hookshot, baby!
Look, 2D, 3D, or even 4D. If you're making a game, put a grapple hook in that game. It makes it 10 times better. I don't care if it's a first-person shooter, a tactical RPG, or even a clicker game. Hookshots rule!
Alright, so after swimming my way through this fun dungeon, I fought the best boss in the whole game. And why is this boss so good, you may ask? Because you need to use the hookshot to beat him, you silly goat! Alright, maiden saved, and now I get lost in the overworld for another hour. Yeah, I had a hard time realizing that the western side of the Dark World was cut off from the east, but eventually I used the mirror to go back to the world, find a blue square on the western side of the world, and I jumped on that and headed into the Thieves' Keep, which was another great dungeon. Kind of. I love the first half of it. You're walking around on this catwalk, and then you jump down when the coast is clear, but I hated the conveyor belts. Conveyor belts are very unhookshot. But once I made it past all the garbage, I found the next maiden.
Oh, thank you very much. You saved my life. Please take me outside.
See, this is kind of neat. Instead of saving the girl from the crystal, I actually get to lead her out. So we go and we make it to the front door and...
Wait a minute. Please don't go this way.
But you wanted to go outside. This is the only way out, and she's gone. So I went and I re-navigated the entire dungeon, conveyor belts and all, and this time I took her to the boss room, because usually after the boss, you get teleported out, and...
Wait. Did I just get catfished?
Well, whether or not traps are gay or not, I still had a fun time fighting blind. After every few hits, you knock his head off, and then it flies around the room and it shoots lasers all around. After you lob off a few more of his heads, it's getting hectic and fun, and it was a great fight. I really liked it. But once I finally killed him, I saved the real maiden. And now it's off to the forest, and this is an interesting dungeon because rather than being interconnected with itself like all the other dungeons, it constantly has you going up to the forest above to find other entrances and even fall in a couple of places. I kinda like the dungeon, but it was ultimately more annoying because if you die, you don't start from the beginning of the dungeon. You actually get warped to Western Hyrule, which means you gotta go to the light world, go through the lost forest, find a teleporter, warp back, and then you can continue with the dungeon. Also, to reach the second part of the dungeon, I had to use my fire rod on this skeleton, which was not immediately apparent to me, so I wandered for half an hour, scratching my head, wondering how do I reach the other part of the forest? And it was simply, light this guy on fire, and then you can walk through. But hey, an annoying dungeon means a fun boss, and this moth was great! And I know from the meme that Moth Boy here likes lamps, but how about the fire rod? Another maiden is saved. After that was the Ice Temple, which was surprisingly easy. Up until the very last puzzle. Okay, how do I hold this switch down? I toiled and I fretted, and then I pushed this block down. Eureka! I pushed that block down! And then I can put... Oh, this is a good puzzle. Okay, it's blocked off by these switches. Oh, but the room right next to this has the switch. Oh, okay, this is another great challenge. I feel so smart. Wait, what's the... Oh, no. So to actually push that block down, I needed to backtrack through over 75% of this dungeon so I could enter through this door after hitting the switch. Very annoying, but the boss, you know, it was an average challenge. I'd say we broke even again. Alright, after saving the 5th maiden, this game takes a hard left in the logic department. We go from great, phenomenal game design to... Are you freaking kidding me? So to get to the next dungeon, naturally you head to this glade, and you find this snoot, or at least that's what I'm calling this guy, and then you hear that he's looking for his ocarina, so you need to head back to the light world, and...
It's time to start digging.
Digging?
Well, of course. Let's not forget what the Spanish found when they came to the New World.
An ocarina! Mountains of it! So you head back to the darker world, and then you show the lost prize to the guy, and then he tells you that, as a snoot, he can't really use it anymore. Then he tells you about an old man in Kakariko Village, and then he asks you to play him a melody. Which kills him. I'm not even making this up. So I head to Kakariko Village, and then I find the man, and he tells me of a boy who was once great friends with a duck, and he would play the ocarina for the duck, and the duck is up in the mountains. Disregard what this old codger says. The mountains are a red herring and have nothing to do with the duck. Instead, you do something logical, like go to the center of the town, and then you stand where the weather vane is pointing, and now you play the ocarina, which will cause the weather vane to just explode. And now you have access to HM02, Fly. So now whenever you whip out the Eon flute and play it, you can get a ride. How would anybody figure this out? So now we need to make our way to Misery Mire. Awesome name, I know. To get there, you need to get a ride from the bird. So you play the ocarina, and then the bird comes and takes you there. At last, we've arrived. All I need to do now is lift up this rock and boom! We're in the Dark World. We're at Misery Mire. Okay, so we head over to here, and this is the entrance, kind of. It's a little blocked because this game needs me to get another specific item that they didn't introduce. It's like way off the beaten path. So, you teleport back to the light world. Now you go to Death Mountain, and be sure to put on your spacesuit so you can wonder why this game went from brilliant game design to moon logic. So you make your way to the very top of the mountain, and then you go off the beaten path, find this random rock, and then you make like Hamilton and hold your sword up to the sky, and now you get this amulet, and now you can continue with the game. Go back to Misery Mire, lift up the rock, go to the Dark World, find this thing, pull out the very specific item in the very specific slot, and now I can go into the dungeon. This next dungeon isn't really hard as much as it's annoying. Very decent puzzles, but there are a lot of annoying enemies and annoying enemy placements. And these freaking things, and these bouncy guys too. Oh, what? Oh, and necessary damage. Everyone loves that. Ugh. Well, annoyingly hard dungeon means annoyingly easy boss. Oh, what an engaging enemy I'm fighting here. Well, with all 6 maidens saved, there's only one maiden left. Princess Zelda, and she's at Turtle Rock. A tough place to get to, but after a long trek up the mountain and navigating past the annoying monsters, I get to these posts. And I remember what the Deku Scrub told me. 23 is number 1. Now to the Dark Realm to save Princess Zelda. Another freaking talisman! Are you kidding me? And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. Our hate is strong and mocks the sound of peace on earth, goodwill to man. You go down the cliff and you find this sign and it says, anyone who throws stuff at me shall suffer my wrath. So you take the sign and then you chuck it at him. And his wrath is actually an item that is very 100% necessary to beating this game. So to figure that out, I actually had to whip out the old walkthrough, so I decided to do a few other things before I headed to Turtle Rock. First off, I saved this frog from the Dark World, took him to the Light World, and he was actually a dwarf. Took him to his dwarven brother, and then they went and they upgraded my sword. While they were upgrading my sword, I decided to go to the Dark World, and I bought the Super Bomb. And then I navigated to the pyramid without my sword, mind you, and then I blew a hole in the side of the pyramid. Then I went back to the Light World and retrieved the Master Sword, which has been newly sharpened. Now, I go back to the pyramid, and now I can trade out the legendary Master Sword, the Sword of Evil's Bane, for a cool little gold one. I can also switch out my bow and arrow for a silver bow and arrow. Alright, now that I've done all that distractions, I can actually play the game and head back to Turtle Rock. Turtle Rock has a decent challenge. The game and the walkthroughs told you that you're gonna want potions of magic, but I decided that I actually wanted to carry around the good bee with me, but the dungeon does actually give you enough magic to pass through all the challenges. Except this one! Whoa, gotta go! But I made it to the boss, and I go and I kill his right side, but what the heck? How do I hurt his left side? How do I damage him? What do I do? To defeat the right head, you use the fire rod. To defeat the left head, you need to use the ice rod. Oh. You know, rewarding exploration just loses all of its sheen when it's 100% necessary. I make my way back, and then I freeze his tail, and then I roast his tail, and then with the golden sword, he dies in just 4 hits. After rescuing Zelda, it's time to fight Ganon. And you know what? I actually liked this castle. The puzzles weren't too bad. I mean, it did have a boss rush, but it wasn't nothing too egregious. You just fight all the bosses from the first 3 dungeons. And now it's time for a rematch with Ant-Man. And this was a pretty good challenge. So instead of shooting lightning at you, he has 2, like, clones flying around the room. And this is a great challenge. So the clones are gonna shoot the balls at you, and then when the balls are shot at you, you need to line up where Aquarium is gonna spawn. And then you hit the ball back where he's gonna hit, and it's pretty hard, but man, it feels good to overcome this. Once you hit him enough times, Ganon will appear, and he'll applaud you for your skill. But he's definitely getting out of there. He just runs away. But your duck friend carries you to his hideout, and it's time for the final fight. All things considered, Ganon's first form is pretty easy. So he has this spear and he throws it around the room. All you do is dodge it and then you just slash him to kingdom come. After that, he knocks down the floor and now it's the real fight time. The item that you need to defeat Ganon is actually the very first item you got, the lamp. He can only be hurt when the room is lit up. So you go, you light the room, and then you slash him. And I did this for like 15 minutes, and I used like an entire bar and a half of magic until I realized, okay, he probably should have died by now. You know, every other Zelda game incorporates the arrows. So you know what I did? I went and I stunned him, and then I hit him with 4 arrows, and bada bing, bada boom, Hyrule, and the day is saved by me, Link. Oh, and my uncle recovered. Huh, that's weird. Thought he died.
So, that was my highly critical look at The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. I'm not gonna let my last 3 hours of this game spoil the first 11. This was a fun game. I thought it was very intriguing to see all the ideas that started here that eventually evolved in Ocarina of Time. It is always an amazing experience to beat a Zelda game. So, I'm gonna say that this was good. This was good, despite that flaw at the end. So I'm gonna put that game away, and what are we looking at next time on WedSNESday? Super Mario Kart. For some reason, I have the carts for most of these games. Did I need to buy this emulator? Glorified emulator?